Hey good people, Batavia here. So we have garden work to do over the next day or two and preparation in part for our average first frost. So today is October the 23rd and our average first frost in Chicago, I garden in zone 6A, is November the 1st. The forecast is calling for a frost and even down to a freeze on November the 1st. So it looks like we're going to be pretty on spot with that. But in the meantime, I'm working off of my fall garden checklist. I'll link the video above and below if you're interested in checking that out. And I want to get to some of the things that we talked about doing in that video. So first up are the raised beds behind me, and namely this one that has kale and Brussels sprouts. So my plan, I think, is going to be to clean up these spaces. And before I do any big harvests inside for the kale, I need to see where I am with my summer vegetables that are going to come out over the course of this next week. We'll be doing the big harvest when it comes to all of my tender plants, all of my summer veggies that are still in the garden. We'll do that this weekend, and I'll likely share that with you all after the freeze, so that'll be a separate video. But for this space, let's go ahead and dig in. I want to take a good look. I haven't been in this bed in quite a while, so we want to get some of these things done. I don't normally film this late in the evening, and it's very clear that every plane that comes out of Midway Airport is flying out this evening. But we're going to get to it. So I'll bring you down here so we can take a look at what's going on in this bed. We have some weeding to do. I need to tie up things like my Brussels sprout plant in addition to topping the plant off. And we can take a better look at how the sprouts are producing. So I normally keep some scissors around the garden, but I've misplaced 2 pair over the last season, and I'm sure they will turn up, but right now I'll just use my pruners. And now I'm wishing I didn't do that because it's not going to be long enough to do what I want to do. All right, so let's tie that back up. And what I'm going to do is tie the Brussels sprout plant to the wire that's on the back side of the cage. I was just looking because I have some weeds there and I can see the weed seeds have dried up, but I don't want to get distracted, so I'm not going to worry about that. Now, I don't normally step in my raised beds, maybe a couple of times throughout the season. I just don't want to aid in compacting the soil, but this is kind of hard to do without getting in here. I can just see the future weeds popping up from the weed seeds here. And they're the prickly kind, so they're going to stick to me as well. I just want something to anchor this plant to. I was a little concerned because I was just going to pick this up tomorrow, but a big wind could come through here and break the plant. Let's see. Maybe I'll go through one more time. I definitely don't want that. I'm kind of just doing this by feel. This is one of the disadvantages of having a raised bed, that you can really only enter from one side. But we find ways around things like that. Now I want to be careful not to pull it too tight because as the wind blows, I don't want to create an issue where the plant snaps the other way. So one, you could see how tall it is now, which I really wasn't that aware of, but you could also see kind of the mess that this bed is. So what we'll do is come back in and clean up all of these lower leaves. This is the other plant. You could see the buds are so much smaller. So to be quite frank, I'm not sure what they're going to do this season. So we have our kale plants, and then we have a bunch of weeds that have grown up here that we'll try to get in and pull. And then because the plants had outgrown the tulle fabric and it had torn in so many places, you can see all of that tape there. That's where I was trying to tape the holes. I just pulled it back weeks ago and decided to take my chance with a cabbage moth. And all in all, there hasn't been any rampant damage. So let's clean this place up and let's take a look at what the bed really should look like. And then we'll make some decisions about how to proceed. Okie doke, so our bed is cleaned up as much as I plan on working in it at this point. And so I have tied up most of these plants. There's our Brussels sprout plant, 1, 2 and 3. And so, I don't know, this is definitely the second, maybe the third year I've grown Brussels sprouts. And I'm just not sure of the timing. These plants have been in the ground since, as transplants, April 30th. And so my extension service basically says you want to transplant Brussels sprouts in 9 to 10 weeks before your average first frost. So these plants were in the garden way earlier than that. So I don't know if that really hurts the plants and the production, but I guess we'll see. So looking at this plant, I was just tempted to pull it. I don't know if, because it's a bit weak, if it's going to survive the weather. Again, kale is super hardy, but this plant clearly is struggling. You can see it's a lighter green than what the kale plants typically look like. But our intention here was to clear this bed, to get some things tied up, and then finally we will top off. I'm going to go ahead and top off all of these plants at this point. I don't think it's going to hurt them, and let's see if it helps them. All right, let's do that. Okay, so when we talk about topping it off, I'll pull these leaves down so you can get a better look. But this is about where I'm going to top it off at. So I'm just going to cut the stem. And that is that. So looking at these leaves, I don't know, they look pretty tender. I'll take these and wash them up, and we'll probably cook these up. All right, so here we'll do the same. And I am trying to cut it somewhat on an angle to allow water, as you know, we get rain and such, to drip down versus sitting in kind of that stump. This looks pretty good too. So this is a good example. These leaves don't look great, so I'm going to toss all of these. Maybe I'll take these with me. And I'll add these to the pot that I cook up the rest of those with. Okie doke, so Brussels sprout tops. So these are the leaves that looked really good. I only took 2 of them with me, and I have them sitting in shallow water until I can work with them. I don't need to submerge the leaves in water. I'll do that when I wash them up really good. And because there's so few, I plan on sauteing them. And maybe once they shrink down a bit in the pan, I'll add a bit of coconut milk to give them a bit of a different taste. Yeah, I think that's the plan. Oh, well, I have y'all, before I move on, I've been meaning to share this. So these are the grow bags that have had the collards in them going back to the spring. And this is what happens in my garden when I don't cover my greens and I'm not treating them with anything, any type of pesticides, organic or otherwise. And I'm talking about the cabbage moth has just been laying eggs, and these worms have been going to town. And that I also have aphids pretty bad. So when I talk about how I would normally manage aphids if these plants were healthier, I would take the water hose and spray daily basically until I can get them under control. These, again, I've just completely let go. So I'm not expecting anything from these plants. There's a small part of me that's looking at this as kind of the sacrificial plant or sets of plants, and perhaps they're leaving my healthier plants alone. Okie doke, so we got the things we wanted to get done in that first bed in the cage baby. We actually did work in this bed, clearing some of the weeds, but primarily tying up some of these plants. They're going to go through a bit of a tough time as this weather shifts. Although the plants themselves, collard green, lacinato kale, collard green, lacinato kale, and then one scarlet kale plant way in the back, in the bottom back here. They'll be fine with these temps, getting down to freezing. Generally, if it's only about 25, 27 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of hours, they'll do just fine. It's the repeated over and over and over again, those low temps where they struggle. I pulled back, similar to the first bed, the cover I had on these beds because you can see how tall they are. I mean, I think if I were to stand I'm about 5'5", and so you can see the difference with how tall these plants are. I don't know, what are they, like 4 feet, 4.5 feet tall? And anywho, they've outgrown the covers, so we're letting them fend for themselves. I'll decide how much I'll harvest before the frost versus after the frost. A part of the work that I did in this bed was to make sure I got rid of any leaves that just weren't desirable, because when I go into this next bit of weather, I basically want to make sure that what I have on the plant is what I'd be ready to eat. All right, so that's that. One more housekeeping item. So you all will see this video and the videos coming up in the next few weeks on a bit of a delay. So especially those folks that are near my area in Chicago, surrounding states, keep an eye on your weather. In Chicago, once this video releases, we'll be like hours away from that first frost and freeze. But you'll see in the coming weeks, I'll still be kind of working through these next handful of days. So speaking of, the next video will be me planting out the backyard beds that sit in the center of the backyard. And that's the set of beds that I plan on overwintering. Following that, I think we're doing one more garden tour before, it all changes. And I believe following that will be a harvest. We'll see how that works out. But my message is, make sure that what you need to do in your garden is getting done, because winter's coming. All right, so I appreciate you spending some time with me. If you have any questions or comments, as always, feel free to drop them below, and I look forward to seeing y'all on the next one.